when someone told me I was going to make 100,000. Like, I couldn't even wrap my mind around it.
Right.
Like, unfathomable.
You know, it's interesting, these two stories that you've shared about this are when somebody has poured belief into you when you didn't believe in yourself, right? So Mario poured belief into you that you're going to be an All-American wrestler and you're going to be a championship wrestler. And what happened? Welcome to the podcast, Monsters. I'm your host, Doug Bartlett. If you have a mind for business or you want to grow, we are the podcast for you. Welcome to the Monster Mindset, guys. Glad to have you back. Today I'm sitting here with Shane Hall, and Shane is a beast. He is somebody that epitomizes being a monster, if there is anybody. So just brought him on today, just talk about where his head's at, what he does. Maybe there's some wisdom that we can glean. So Shane, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, geez, where do we start, Doug? I think we just did a whole podcast for the last 45 minutes.
Yeah, right. We've been just sitting there, just jiving, trying to figure it out.
Well, I mean, just standard conversation, NFTs, how Yoda is a great philosopher, Right.
Yeah, what's your favorite Yoda quote?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah, this is the one I got on my wall. I think you just took that one. That's all.
No, I literally, it's awesome. Yoda in himself, because he has all these, it's simple. He has all these simple philosophies, and I'm a big believer in like philosophers. I love psychology of the mind. I love that type of stuff that makes you think different. It makes you lean in different, just powerful quotes from powerful people. I've always enjoyed that.
Yeah. I mean, so, nobody on the podcast knows that, but I have that in big block letters on the wall in my offices and I also really like the first part of that quote, which is, you must unlearn what you have learned. Do or do not, there is no try.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the first part's always kind of cut off, just like a lot of famous people like Grant Cardone and all these different people. It's interesting how people will cut off the first part of their lives.
Right.
Grant Cardone's interesting because, he's flying around in jets and he's making money and he's going after it. But if you read his book, Millionaire Booklet, and you read his story, he's like, man, I think he sold cars initially, and then he went door to door. And he's like, I didn't flex, I didn't party, I didn't buy a watch. He's like, I did nothing till I think 35 or 36.
Yeah. He's
like, all I did was work, build capital, and then invest that and start businesses. And yet if you talk to some people, they're like, oh, let's flex now. I'm like, well, you're 21. Yeah. Well, Grant Cardone said.
Yeah, no, get real. It takes a little bit of time. I think that, back to that Yoda quote for a second, though, it's like, I think that, we have a system that teaches people not to think. And so that's why that first part's really important to me. It's because most people, when you meet them, they can't fathom the opportunities that life presents if you just have your eyes open and your mind open. And it's like we lose that. Yeah,
and it's tough when you're not exposed, right? If you get into a system and a routine and you're around the same people and you're doing the same thing, sometimes the comfort of life, if you're working a job that maybe your boss isn't really a mentor, you're not being challenged, or you're not seeking information, you're not reading different books or YouTubing anything different, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, like you said, people fall into that space where they don't challenge themselves, or they don't want to grow.
Yeah.
Or they don't know they need to or want to grow.
Yeah. Shane, tell me, at what point in your life do you feel like you had that mindset shift where you moved into the space of, I know I need to grow, or I have this mindset of infinite opportunities? How did that shift happen for you, or was that always there?
Definitely not always there. It's interesting. I remember key pivotal points. I grew up Nampa, Idaho, rural. My first job literally was corn topping field work. We ride our bike 3 miles uphill both ways. Yeah. They were rolling hills. Right? Yeah. So we would go do field work. And I remember my family, they're awesome. My family, salt of the earth, hard working, right? Mm-hmm. But there wasn't a lot of college education. There's actually no college education. The first one, I think my cousin broke the mold on that.
Right.
And started thinking. So I didn't really think big. I was just hopefully someday have a steady job so I can make money. I did not think I was going to do anything outside of Idaho.
Yeah. Yeah, we share that. I grew up on a farm outside of Caldwell.
Yeah.
And so, I was wearing Levi's and white T-shirts and work boots to school.
As I'm still wearing a white t-shirt and jeans. I love it. Yeah, I came full
No work
circle.
boots, though.
No work boots. But I think the first time I really started thinking of it is I threw a party in college. So ultimately, I was in a business class in college, and everyone was getting in trouble for partying. You can't throw parties, right? And I didn't really want to drink and party as much as I wanted to throw events, looking back. I really wanted to do some cool events. And I'm in a business class, and I talked about shell companies, and I was talking about these people building shell companies, right? And I'm like, what's a shell company? And the professor's like, well, this is how you don't get in trouble. The shell company gets in trouble. So me and my buddies got together, and we made up this Omega thing. Basically, it was a shell company. Fast forward in time, we had like 150 members in these different chapters, and I had a bank account. And if you were a fraternity or somebody that wanted to throw a party, you would just run it through my shell company.
Wasn't there a movie made about this here, like that crazy party gone
Van
wrong?
Wilder later came out, which is after the fact. But anyways, finally I got in trouble, really big trouble. Basically, I've got in trouble to the point where me graduating was being very disputed. Very right. And I go to that professor we were talking about, Doc McLean, rest in peace. He just passed away about 6 weeks ago. And I'm in trouble because of, some minors who drink at the party. I made, some bad decisions. It was really, I just throw a party, and you can't do that, right?
You put your hands down. Did they put cuffs on you?
Yeah, they did. Sorry, Grandma. Sorry, Mom. So I got
your body told the story. You're like,
I got arrested. I got arrested. It was my first time. I'm like, oh my gosh. And this guy's like, hey, I'll let you go if you tell me who bought the kegs, and that's my boy Gilbert Jones, still this day, my drill partner. He's an All-American wrestler.
Still in jail.
Yeah. Sorry, Gil. Actually, I think he just got his master's from Harvard Business.
Oh, nice.
Literally, I got a picture the other day. Anyways, all I had to do was roll on him, and everything would go away, and it'd be fine. I wouldn't do it. So that went down a path of a lot of uncertainty. So I'm with this professor trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And he's like, hey, and he's kind of drunk and slosh around with his whiskey. And Doc McLean's like, Shane, don't worry, you're not a teacher anyways. And I'm like, dude, I'm about to graduate here in a couple months. My dad, my grandma, they all have their flights booked. And he's like, you're not a teacher. He's like, in fact, all the stuff you're doing is correct. The society's incorrect. Like, you should be out there doing events, and people should be, talking and mingling and all this stuff. He's like, you actually are going to make millions of dollars. You're going to travel the world, and you're going to talk for a living. He's like, you're going to influence people for a living.
Badass.
He literally said that drunk, sloshing around with a vinyl record. I'm talking like this. He's old school. He's out. And Doc McLean, and I'm like, hey man, like, what do you mean? I'm about to not be able to graduate. And he threw down thousands of dollars, and he says, hey, this is going to start us up this court case. And I'm like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. Damn. He's like, Shane, don't even worry about this. He's like, I believe in you, but you're not going to be a public school teacher.
Wow.
He's like, it'll drown you. And he said, you're going to meet a professor with about public relations. You're going to stay another semester. Instead of accepting my bachelor's, you're going to stay another semester. You're not going to graduate right now, and you're going to come back and learn to communicate with people, and that's what you're going to do in your life.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool story.
And it pivoted, and I started talking to Trent Poage, I believe, Trent, your last name. I went in there, and I'm sitting with him after the class, and he goes, Shane, I make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and God told me to take a step back and come in and teach classes. He goes, that I'm just here because God told me to teach classes. He's like, maybe we should be having this conversation.
Okay.
Nice. And that started opening a lens of discovery and looking at things differently, looking at the process, thinking, questioning, looking at stuff.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. Shane, I want to rewind back to a little bit more about who you are, and can you share with the audience, what you've been successful at in your life, and what's got you to where you are? Like, what businesses are you involved in? How's that worked out for you? Just give them, brag on yourself a little bit. Need to establish a little bit of credibility for you,
Yeah. Well, I'll start out with the reason why I've had success in life is I am the epitome of being aligned with the right coaches, the right business partners, aligning with the right people.
Okay.
Like, it's just almost every coach I've had is either in the Hall of Fame or Hall of Fame bound in football or college.
That's cool.
Like, I'm talking, my college wrestling coach just retired literally 2 weeks ago. I was at the NAI Nationals, and I was fortunately on this national championship team. And this guy's produced 170 All-Americans, 3 national titles.
Wow.
Like, he's been doing it 30 years. And so I was privy to be in his system. And there's a guy named Todd Cady who's retiring here about 20 years, and he won state titles in high school wrestling. And that goes back to my dad wrestled for this guy named Raleigh Lane. And
I've heard that name, Raleigh Lane.
Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame. He's like really famous guy, and he actually coached me a little bit. He came in because I was getting my butt kicked by a guy, and he helped coach me up so I could get a win.
Okay.
Probably out of pity. So I've been around all these winners and these champions in business, in business and life and sports. And so all of my accomplishments are very much streamlined through people that are exceptional. Okay. And then they have exceptional patience with me. And that led me into a lot of disruptive spaces, like door to door.
Right. Is it okay if we talk about the company that you work for?
Yeah, we can talk about whatever.
Or work with, or however that works. I don't know exactly the relationship.
Well, I fell into it because drunken Doc McLean told me I wasn't a teacher.
Right.
And all of a sudden I turned down my teaching job. I was going to teach and coach football and wrestling. And I was a wildland firefighter for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to explore that forever. And my buddy goes, hey, man, I went out and made $100,000 knocking door to door. Wow. And that's when I fell into the thoughts of making money and then learning sales and marketing.
Was your buddy in AMP?
I started a company called Vivint.
Okay.
I was there for 2 years.
Okay.
And then AMP was a startup, and I was like, well.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Vivint.
Yeah, what if I go to this startup? What if? You know?
Yeah, Vivint's huge now, right? I mean,
yeah, they're big. Yeah, AMP's alive and Vivint's alive. Like, both the companies excel. So I got very fortunate. I worked with a company that was successful, and then I transitioned to another company that was successful.
Yeah, yeah. And how long have you been with AMP now?
14 years.
14 years, dang.
Yeah, like little. Yeah, I go out and knock doors. I sucked. I was not good. I'm the guy you probably would fire. You know, I no sales the first several months. Made like $700 in 7 weeks. And then when it clicked and I started cash flowing on it, I got very, very fortunate to run to another mentor named Dan, who discussed with me building assets and building wealth, not just spending.
Okay.
My first 6-figure year, I think it was like 120,000. He convinced me to invest 100 of it.
Wow.
And live minimalistic and tell nobody about my success.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And have you continued to do that?
Yeah, I love compounding. I like assets.
That's a good thing. It's a good habit to be.
Yeah, so my spaces are very disruptive spaces. At the time, door-to-door was disruptive. Smart home was disruptive. Like, I don't need an alarm or anything. I have a gun. Right. Solar is disruptive. NFT, crypto, marketing. I really like the disruptive spaces.
Yeah. How did you get to that point where you moved from being in door-to-door sales with AMP to where you started really building teams? What was that transition?
You know, I remember I'm out there and I grinded. You know, you're out there, and I came up with a formula of I'm not that good, so I might as well get on the doors at 12 and then not stop until 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
And then I realized I still liked coaching. I loved coaching. So I would donate my time and coach high school wrestling. Coach high school wrestling as an assistant coach for about 7 years. I would donate my time for free because other coaches helped me. That's how I went to college, got a scholarship for, wrestling. And so I donate my time. And then on the other side, I'm running these teams, and I realized I had a knack for inspiring people, giving them a route, believing in them. All that stuff I learned in wrestling and football very much translates into like building teams.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to what you were just talking about, is instead of being a teacher, you learned the communications. And so you've been, you've taken on speaking and inspiring people as a way of life. And it's really paid dividends for you in all this team building that you've done and business growth, right? Oh my gosh. I mean, dude, every time we connect, I love the conversation. And I know you've sat down with individuals and seen them change. Yeah. You bring them on and they're raw. I mean, how many times have you seen that? A person comes on and they're struggling and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, just awesome. Yeah. It's amazing how impactful you can be on person when you really have that intense, real conversation with somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see the rawness, especially in sales and in hardships, you get to see the rawness and the vulnerability of people. And that's also what brings the strength out of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're really vulnerable and you're in that moment and you're in dire need, you know, for you to be successful in your company. And I knew of you even before we knew each other, because we'd have individuals go work for each other.
Right.
And all I knew is you're a good, honest, credible guy and people respect you. And that means that at some point someone is in their vulnerable spot and you stepped up and communicated with them in a way that they excelled.
Yeah.
You know, people don't trust people just to trust because they have a paycheck. People usually trust people because they were in a vulnerable state and that individual was there for them.
Yeah, somebody invested in them, right? And that's what it takes, is like being interested in people and investing in them and believing in them when they don't believe in themselves can really move their lives.
Oh, I mean, it's so interesting how many moments. I don't know if you remember the conversations. I remember very specific conversations. One, I wasn't a very good high school wrestler. I ended up wrestling like one full year. I got hurt a bunch. And then I went to college, and there's this guy named Mario Thomas. And I remember the day he told me, he's like, Shane, you're going to be an All-American. We're going to win a national championship. He like told me this stuff. And I'm like, dude, I haven't even scored a point. And I'm like, is this going to happen this year? He's like, no way. He's like, no way in hell. He's like, you suck right now. He's like, but it'll happen. And it was the first time someone talked to me at that level.
Right.
Like, top 6 in America. I couldn't even think about that. I got 4th in Idaho.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember when someone told me I was going to make 100,000, like I couldn't even wrap my mind around it.
Right.
Like unfathomable.
You know, it's interesting. There's 2 stories that you've shared about this are when somebody has poured belief into you when you didn't believe in yourself. Right. So Mario poured belief into you that you're going to be an All-American wrestler and you're going to be a championship wrestler. And what happened?
It's so interesting. Yeah, it works out. Right. But to go back on that, that's because I was around a group of guys that are just, these guys are awesome.
Yeah.
You know, Cami Barzine's coach in the UFC. My buddy LC Davis fights Bellator. I think got signed UFC as well. Those guys are all Americans. We got world champ jiu-jitsu, black belts. A friend of mine's, I won't say his name, he's active SEAL Team 6 member right now. You know,
wow.
Yeah, so I can't say his name.
Yeah.
You'll find me. But this team is just all these individuals that iron sharpens iron.
Right.
And I mean, college wrestling is a long time ago, but it's interesting. Those small little principles of belief is what I remember.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, you know, your professor did the same thing, right? He poured something into you, some belief into you, like, okay, I'm not going to be a teacher. I can really like be successful doing the things that were interesting to me already. Yeah,
that's so interesting how you say that, because I was like, you're crazy. I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, dude, I was arrested. I might not graduate.
Right.
I'm like, what you're saying now, I should stay longer. You know, this institution might get rid of me. But he was just so passionate. He's like, Shane, you don't understand what you're doing. That works. He's like, that works in business. I'm like, how does throwing a party work in business? And he's like, because you're doing it the right way. Like, I wasn't doing it in a negative way. I was actually running a business in hindsight, right? And yes, I'm not justifying anything, because, or maybe I am. But the thought that he can view me that way. And I always viewed myself, because I'm dyslexic and ADD, and I wasn't a very good kid. Heck, I think I got in.
Preacher's kid. It's classic.
Well, my dad was already a minister later in life.
Oh, okay.
Growing up, dad was, tough guy, cowboy kind of guy.
Okay, all right.
But when did it happen for you? Do you remember any of those moments that someone instilled belief in you?
You know, I mean, I think my path was a little different than yours. Like, mine was more of like a accidental discovery. I mean, I kind of always had this idea that I wanted to be self-employed from a pretty young age, but I didn't really know what or how. But I grew up really poor, and, you know, parents went through bankruptcy when I was young and divorced, and so I was like, you know, working on the farm, changing sprinkler pipes, and I was like ingrained that, like, I'm gonna be rich someday. Like, it's like burning inside of me, and I had to do something different than the path that I had seen laid out before me.
How interesting that we're so blessed to have had that experience, because I remember growing up in a single wide trailer.
Yeah.
My mom and dad work fairly hard. They still work hard, right? And farm and not getting made fun of for my shoes and my clothes, and getting in fights for that. And now I'm like, wow, how blessed I am to have had those experiences.
Oh yeah, I mean, the work ethic that it instills, and like the deep desire that it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I understand this work ethic, and I understand that I don't want to live this way, like deeply. And so when those opportunities come up, you tend to recognize them, because it's like you're hungry for them. Like, it's like so deeply ingrained that you're automatically hungry for them.
Yeah. Do you think How pivotal is that upbringing, that chip on your shoulder, I guess you could say? How pivotal do you think it was for you in the cultivating of being an entrepreneur?
I think that if you're raised in a comfortable middle class, in a lot of ways that's a disadvantage. Because what you saw is like, it was good. We had a happy household, and it's not a bad life. And so I guess I'll just go get a good education, get a good job, and pay my mortgage until I die.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's kind of a disadvantage, to be honest. I think if you haven't faced adversity, you're kind of in trouble. You better dig deep and really find out what you really want to change, because if you don't, you're not gonna.
Yeah, and adversity is uncomfortable, and now as a society, we strive for more comfort, right? I'm very blessed to have traveled the world. I traveled the world and been around uncomfortable situations, seen very interesting things, and that uncomfort also grows individuals way faster than comfort.
Yeah, it definitely does. It makes you aware more of everything that's going on around you. I mean, if you can get past the immediate need of like, I got to feed myself, and then start being aware of opportunities that transition from one to the other, I think that's a key point. That can change you because some people can be too poor and they can be stuck in that, like, I got to find lunch and I got to eat lunch, and that's all I'm thinking about right now because I'm hungry. But if you can get past that point and start looking at opportunities to change your life, then something changes.
Well, and then you always have this come to Jesus moment, these reality rechecks. Like I was in Petra 2 months ago. I was over in Petra. I've always wanted to go. It's one of the wonders of the world. And I'm there, and so I was seeking kind of a guide, but like somebody local. And Muhammad, he was showing us around, and he's I think he's 4th or 5th cave dweller. So he was super excited that his dad passed the cave to him. His cave.
Okay.
So he lives in,
That's interesting.
Yeah, he lives in a cave. And so as I'm interviewing him, I had a videographer there, Omar, and we're going around and we're meeting with people. Like I didn't just want to see the sights and everything, the history, which I love history, but I wanted to have conversations like, okay, how's this pandemic affecting you guys? How's this going? He's like, well, because tourism and his story. And he looked at me one time and goes, hey man, my dad just gave me the cave. Like hard flex. Like, I go like a cave? He goes, yeah. And he goes, it's been passed through generations. But the rule is I can't sell the cave.
Right.
Can't give the cave away. Right. And I'm like, well, how do you shower in the cave? He's like, in the elements. Like, how do you charge your phone? They just have solar panels that they go plug their phone. And he's like, well, I was going to travel this year, but I need to furnish my cave. And we're having these conversations, and we're going around. He's showing us these amazing views and these deep conversations. And it's interesting. His anxiety and depression is not really there because he's so content. He's like, no, this is what I do. Like, I mean, think about if you don't have all these things weighing you down. Think about how many things in your house alone need to be fixed and weighed down.
Yeah.
I mean, his cave, man.
Are you a minimalist?
I'm very much a minimalist.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, there's aspect of my life that have, my new place, my house. Doesn't look like
that
art
minimalist
studio's
house.
Not a minimalist. I'll take you to my old duplex because basically I would make money and just invest. And I lived in my duplex. I just bought investment property. It's 700 square foot duplex, and I liked putting in my own floors and painting my own walls and all that kind of stuff, right? But now the art studio I live in that we did the nonprofit in. That just allowed me to have different spaces of communication. When you're working with artists and videographers or creatives like you're very much a creative. Yeah. I don't think anybody on this will pick up because they haven't been to your place, but you're an awesome artist, amazing artist. And I love art, and you're definitely a creative. Yeah. And so when you get creatives in a space like my studio, the conversations are just awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. I've only seen the pictures of your place so far, so you're going to have to come over and check it out one of these days. I want to pivot a little bit, Shane. You're talking about being in disruptive spaces. You've had a lot of success with AMP. I know you guys are like working into the solar side of things, and you also have some interest in NFTs. And so, what got you interested in NFTs initially?
The thing that got me interested in NFTs is the thing that got me interested in door-to-door. The thing got me interested in solar and smart home. What got me interested in not being a teacher, I think subconsciously, when somebody like mocks me when I bring something up. So if I say, hey, I'm going to do door-to-door sales, I'm going to make $100,000 and be a millionaire someday, right? You say that and everybody's going to laugh at you when you're 19 or something or 20,
Yeah.
right? Or if you say, hey, this digital piece of art, I think that will be worth money.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
Just like you. It's like, hey, I'm going to put roofs, new roofs, and I'm going to make a bunch of money and be successful and have a podcast.
Well, you know. Hey.
Yeah, right? But the moment I feel this pushback, there's a certain level of comfort that makes me, I need to ask questions why. Well, why are you uncomfortable with me knocking door to door? Or why are you uncomfortable with me putting money into an NFT?
Right.
And so these disruptive spaces allow me to ask questions. Well, I saw them making fun of my buddy Dylan Broad again. They're like, oh, he's talking about his NFTs again. I'm in Portugal. We're just hanging out in Portugal on an AMP trip. And I've been exploring NFTs, but I just didn't have all the knowledge. I didn't have someone that I trusted to give me the knowledge. And I go, what do you know about it? And he's like, he just lights up. And I go, okay, man,
all right,
let's start doing this. Let's buy this taxi. It drives in the metaverse and makes me polka dot. What, that ape? He's kind of melty. Oh, it's worth more because he's melting. Okay. Like everything didn't make any sense. And that made a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
Because then when I dove into the utility and the potential and the long term of it, then I started thinking, okay, maybe this is the future of how we're going to do digital contracts. This is the future of how you're going to buy a house. I think there's a lot of future utility with NFTs.
Yeah, huge. I mean, I can't imagine that, like, for example, title companies are not going to just like disappear, at some point due to NFTs, because why would you need a title chain from a title company when you can have an NFT that shows a clear chain of ownership, right? I mean, somebody just has to establish that system.
Yeah.
And so definitely industries are going to be shook by this technology.
Well, and it tells a story. It makes sense. It's like your text thread. It's as simple as a text thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or an email chain. That's it. Here it is. It's on here.
Yeah.
And there it is. So there's no disputing. We've all had that business conversation. We're like, what did we talk about? And you scroll back, you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a no-brainer. So how deep are you into NFTs at this point?
Yeah, we can, at Urban League Media, we can, build them. We can build Discords. I actually just unloaded a bunch recently right before the dip. I actually might buy some of them back. So I'm in it as far as education, and I made some money on them, and I keep some and I hold some, and I like it because I want to have the education in the long term.
Yeah.
Now I'm assuming you're in deeper than me.
I'm pretty deep into it right now. Yeah. Shout out to my fellow Clone X.
Well, what got you into NFTs? Like you and I are you're an artist, man. Here you are. I'm assuming the roofing aspect, you like building, and that's fueling your life. And then, here you are mining. You mine crypto. Yeah. You're an artist, and then you fall into NFTs. Was it the art, or was it the utility, or what drew you to NFTs?
Yeah, I mean, first it was just like a lot of curiosity. Like, I heard people talking about this NFT thing, and I'm like, what is this? Like, how, as an artist, that was just, I was like, okay, I do digital art, right? And I was a fine art major, so I was, I paint and I draw and sculpt, but I found it, in building a business, I don't have a lot of time. I can't just sit down for a solid week to do a really nice oil painting, because that's about what it takes for me to do a really good oil painting is about 40 hours. And paint dries, and I'm building a business. So I transitioned into just using my iPad to do more digital art, because then I can pick it up for 1 hour once a week for 40 weeks if I want to, right? And it's real easy that way, and I don't have to worry about no paint drying. So I was like, it's cool, and I know that people tend to like my art when they see it. I mean, not to be egotistical, but generally people, appreciate it, and I think that I could have a market for it, but it's hard to sell.
Yeah, no, it's rad. I was at the house. We talk more about your art than the company.
Yeah. So I was like, NFTs, this is cool. I mean, maybe this is a way I could sell my art and, do, one-offs that are higher value, or, collections that are not as high of value but still valuable, and I could actually be able to make some money on the side, and I get to still keep the art as well that way too. So I started diving into it, and I was like, dang, man, some of these are going for mad money, like stupid. Like, what is up with people selling like $69 million piece of digital art?
A doodle.
Yeah,
I sold a doodle. I'm like, I made how much on that? And my buddy Dylan was like, dude, this is where it's at. I'm like, my nephew can draw that. Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So then I started looking at it and I was like, what is this? Is this an original piece of art? It's a certificate showing it's like the original. Okay. I mean, I kind of get that. If you could buy the original Mona Lisa, it's worth a lot compared to a poster. It ain't worth nothing. And then I understood roadmaps and, what, giving value back and building community. And so there's a lot to it. And it just has drawn me in, one step at a time. And now I'm pretty deeply invested in it. I think, I think I've got, 3 clones, 3 monoliths, anonymous. Anyway, I don't know. There's probably 15.
I'm so
ones.
excited to hear this this phone call in 10 years. This podcast. In fact, I need to have my grandma watch this.
Yeah.
She's like, "What's a monolith? What's a bored ape? Why?"
Yeah.
Well, so where do you see the future of it? Fast forward 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the future of it's really in two things. One is in utility, and the other one's in community. I think that you can create a lot of community and a lot of give back. I think that clones are doing a great job of that. I don't know if you follow the CloneX thing with Artifact Studios. Nike bought them out.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so they're doing like drop after drop and free drops and building community, and it's building value. So there's a lot of investment value there. And so I think that's one side. But the other side is something that hasn't even hardly been touched yet, which is, just like we're talking about, chain of ownership, custody, chain of custody, titles, proof of ownership type of work.
Yeah, and I think
in the real world stuff.
I think that's going to be a huge value to people in the future.
Yeah.
So what are some tips that you think help you recognize opportunity? So as I'm listening and talking to you, you've been able to recognize opportunity. You've gone through different businesses and you're successful, at the businesses. How do you recognize opportunity in asset development or opportunity and knowledge, or when do you know to listen? Like, what are some tips that are like in your mind that you feel help people recognize opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to just approach life from a curious standpoint more than anything else. Like, I intentionally feed my brain with different things. Like, I subscribe to like a magazine app, and I don't like deeply read any one magazine, but once a month I go through and like read 40 magazines over a course of 3 hours, where I'm just like putting together different pieces. What's interesting, what's hot, what's changing, and it's like feeding my mind with different points of input. And also like just, listening to some podcasts and just hearing different voices and like putting pieces together. I think that just sparks creativity in my brain to put different pieces together.
Yeah, the consistency of feeding your mind, right? Yeah. And then sometimes I think it's interesting. I had my old mentor tell me that I stopped reading books after college. I didn't want to read books. I didn't watch. I didn't educate myself really at all.
Right.
And I was just making money. And he was like, "Oh, what books, are you reading?" Because he flew me out to Greece. He's like, "Hey man, let's go on a trip." Because Smart, we were blown up. And he's like, "Hey man, let me take you on a trip." I'm like, "Oh, where?" He's like, "Pick wherever." And I'm like, "California." And he's like, "You want to go to California?" He's like, "Dude, I'm talking about the world." I'm like, "You're really offering me a trip around the world. I'm 20 something, right?" He's
right.
like, yeah, wherever you want to go. And I'm like, "Whoa." And I'm like, and we decided on Greece, and I grew up, being a history major. I'm like, "Oh, we're there. We're on the island of Santorini." And I remember putting on the free robe and the free slippers, like everything free. And we were staying in these caves, and I walk out and I'm drinking the coffee because they put coffee out. And he's like looking at me like I'm an idiot because I looked like an idiot. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm pretending to be a millionaire." And he's like, "What book are you reading, millionaire?" I'm like, "I don't read books." I'm like, "I'm done with college." And he did a, And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Poor people watch TV and wonder why. Rich, wealthy people read books and know why."
Right.
And just the simplicity of invest in education.
Yeah.
That's it. He's like, invest in education. This guy just recently sold his company. He owned AMP for a little while, and he sold his other company for $170 million the other day. And he still gives me advice and everything. And it always comes back to invest in education, think, lean in. And he's an old Idaho boy too that grew up with nothing and self-made. And so I listen to that a lot on the fact of just educate and listen and cultivate.
Yeah.
And I think you were talking about the education system, that sometimes people are getting stuck and they're not thinking outside the box or their routines. And so they're not getting ahead.
Yeah. What are you reading right now?
Right now, right before the summer, I always do Tzu Art of War. So I always dive into Tzu Art of War.
Yeah.
Right. I always like to reread the Millionaire booklet. It's a really small booklet by Grant Cardone because all the guys I mentor. So I'll have a lot of mentees come out.
Right.
But the Sun Tzu Art of War is just so simple, right? I dive into it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading other like vulnerability books. So I like to do a mind book, a business book, and kind of an entertaining book. I also bounce between books. So I have Extreme Ownership right now, Millionaire booklet.
Yeah.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I have to address it because our guys, we start out in that spot.
Okay.
Right. So when you first come onto our mentorship program, I want to give you the foundations of it.
Okay.
So I personally bounce around between books because I'm ADD. And what I found is I bounce between chapters. And I came up with a way that I can read books, like instead of reading front to back, the full thing,
Right.
I'll actually dive into different chapters.
Interesting. Yeah, you got extreme ADD going on, like, obviously.
Yeah, well, what I've realized, I mean, let's say it's a finance book.
I read the ending first.
Well, okay, if the ending is what applies to you. So I think modern education, in my opinion, right, sometimes maybe why I wasn't interested in reading in education is, let's say there's a book.
Yeah.
Right? Let's say it's a finance book.
Yeah.
And chapter 1 is you're a struggling college kid. Okay. Chapter 10 is you're in your 30s and you have 3 kids and you want to build a portfolio.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, everybody, a lot of times in public education, we're taught to read front to back.
Yeah.
But if you're this 30-year-old guy with kids and you want to build a portfolio and build wealth, you should skip all of those chapters and go to that chapter.
Yeah. I joke about that, but the fact of the matter is like the magazines that I read, like if I see an article that's interesting, the first thing I do is read the last paragraph.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's get the summary here and then see if there's enough meat on the bone for me to actually want to read this article or not.
Yeah. Well, the subtle art, not giving an F. That's another one I like. So I have 5 books right now I'm basically bouncing around through.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, one of those books is Proverbs. Like we were just talking about,
Okay.
So just the book of Proverbs, I'll bounce between that. So depending on what my emotional needs and my meditative state, because I believe in meditation, I believe in a healthy morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
I believe not looking at your phone until you've done some for me personally, some thankful prayer, some breathing, and to start slow because whatever's on that phone is going to stimulate me negatively or positively, and it's going to directly influence me. So about this time of the year while I'm reading my Sun Tzu Art of War, but I'm also reading Proverbs, so that way I can have that spiritual attachment, and I start the day realizing that, Shane, no matter what goes wrong, you're not living in a cave.
Yeah, it's interesting. I start my mornings off with a 5-minute thankfulness meditation. Like,
oh, really?
First thing when I wake up, I just lay back in the bed, stare at the same spot in the ceiling and just meditate on like what I'm thankful for in my life. And it's a great way to like change your mindset for like how you approach life for the day, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's so huge. And it's interesting how many upper tier entrepreneurs I run into. And you say 5 minutes, some 3 minutes, some an hour, but it's interesting how simple that is and how healthy that is. I got 2 sides of me. I got my Shane Hall capitalist side. Like, let's win. Let's all American national titles. Let's make aggressive money. Let's build companies. I don't care if there's a tornado or it's raining, go to work.
Yeah.
Right. And then my Shane side where wake up, do my meditation, do some yoga, read some Proverbs in this scenario we're talking about, water my plants, draw, paint, like that's the part of me that wants to see the world and feel the world and have a conversation with a spiritual leader or something, and so it feels like, and I'm sure a lot of people apply, like the 2 people are at war with each other sometimes.
Yeah. What's driving you now? Like what keeps you going every day?
Yeah. It's interesting. And I want to also ask you the same question because I don't think I would have ever imagined having certain types of wealth and assets and availability in my life. I could have never fathomed like where I am today. And at the same time, you and I have a lot of friends that are skyrocket way beyond us, right? I mean, there's the Bezos, there's all these people. I really like to achieve and I really like to impact and I really like to be in a situation to help my family and my friends. I really think God gave me a talent to be able to outwork a lot of people. I have a high pain tolerance. I have just enough likability and just enough lean into stuff that I can put myself in a situation that if my family's in a bad spot, I can help them.
Right.
And I think if sometimes people should recognize the fact that they can be in a spot to help other people. I really want to live and give exceptionally. I really do. I think I agree with you. We had a conversation earlier about we are on earth to experience life and to do things, you know, and everybody has their own journey. And right now I think my journey is just accelerating in so many different facets or forms. And yeah, I just want to I like growing people, growing things, building things, experiencing things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to all those. I agree with them. I think the thing that drives me most right now is growing like that circle of people that I see that can change their lives. Like that's the most impactful thing right now, because, you know, there's, you know, I get offers all the time to sell my company, and I'm just not interested, because I like being involved in the build and the creativeness of the build, but also at this point, not just the build, but building up people to change their lives, and then seeing them go on and change other people's lives. Like that residual effect of continuing to change other people's lives through that effort that you put in is very personally rewarding.
Well, yeah, because it's your vessel, right?
Yeah.
You're basically a coach, you know, but it's your vessel. You can impact, you can do things. And that's why I like, you know, being at AmpSmart, I've been there 14 years. It's cool that guys come in, and I have individuals that have been in the program, and they showed up with a trash bag and no money.
Right.
They walk away worth hundreds of $1,000s or millions of dollars, or they walk away just a better person, and they become a teacher, and they do their calling in a higher tier way.
Right.
Like that's why I believe in having that vessel. And it sounds like your company is your vessel to communicate and help other people.
Yeah. And to try to inspire people too, you know, I think that's one of the things that, you know, it's, you know, it's really important, is that you seek ways to inspire people to change their lives. And so, you know, I think that as this company, as Bartlett Roofing has gotten to a certain size, you know, I want to start to like do other things too, to let people see that, hey, there's not just one vessel.
Yeah.
There's opportunities all around you, and you just have to recognize them and then go really work hard at them and make them happen.
And man, like how blessed are we to have that? How blessed are we for you to be sitting there having no money, laying pipe in a field, right? Just digging ditches. And you're like, someday I'm going to be big. You know, because a lot of people don't see that. I remember a distinct moment when I was fighting fires. So what I would do is I would fight wildland fires in the summer, and I'd go wrestle full time, go to school. But I only had enough money to fly back for Christmas in the summer. So I'd live at people's houses for Thanksgiving and Easter. In fact, the first time I even knew we had to leave our dorm room, my buddy was like, "Hey man, you got to leave." I'm like, "What do you mean I got to leave?" Like, I got a dorm room. He's like, "You got nowhere to go?" I'm like, And so he's like, "Well, come home with me." And I went and stayed on with his family. Thank you, Jay Johnson, the Johnson family. And I remember I fly back in Idaho, and I barely make it to the base in Oregon. And I have $8.75. I remember I had $8.75 because half was in change. And at any time you can ask for, there's a lot of ways to find help, right? But I was like, I wanted to do it myself. And so I'm out there, and I knew I didn't get my paycheck for 2 weeks. And I'd run a chainsaw, and we'd thin out the forest until the fires picked up. I was on the national crew, and they'd call us out. And I remember I bought cans of chili, put bags of potatoes, butter. I remember specifically how I bought the stuff for 2 weeks of rations.
Wow.
And I remember putting the ramen noodles in water for Tupperware so it would soak up. And then we had our 10-minute break. We'd get up at 6 a.m. be running a chainsaw. And I'm sitting there, and I opened the ramen, and it was chili day because I had 4 cans of chili. And that Wednesday was chili day. And I'm eating this cold chili with this beautiful view of the forest. I'm sweating, and I don't have anything. And I'm in debt, you know, student loans. And I'm just like, I know I don't have any money. And I'm like, man, I'm going to see the world. I'm going to do cool stuff. I'm going to make money. Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's inevitable. Because in my mind, I'm like, there's no way I can go down from here. I'm like, I'm at the bottom.
Right,
like, I have nothing.
This is great.
Like, I'm at zero.
Go ahead, take it away. You got some ramen.
Yeah, I got ramen noodles. And I was like, man, when I get that paycheck next week, dude, when we get called on a fire, that's like $1,000. And I just remember like thinking kind of like you did, like, I think I'm going to do a bunch of cool stuff because I can't go back the other way.
Right.
So why do you think people see with that lens? Why do you think sometimes people look at the positive and some people lean towards the negative?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think people just get stuck in like acting in the way that they've seen their parents act. You know, I think people never move past taking, move into taking responsibility for themselves. Like they just, and I don't know if it's, emotional damage that they received or if, they, just like, they just haven't ever been equipped in any way. Nobody maybe has ever poured into them at a point where it was pivotal enough for them to change their lives. But I think that's a big part of it is just like people don't take that full responsibility for themselves.
Yeah, and you know what, to reinforce what I said originally when you're talking about my journey, it goes back to, I'm telling you, dude, I am so even us, our conversations, I'm so fortunate. I have no idea. The energy of the world leads me to individuals like you, and I have these conversations, and I get these people to help me believe differently. I've had coaches just along the way, just put in that extra time, just that extra time, that extra rep, and I feel bad because there's a lot of people that maybe look the negative direction because they didn't have anybody say something positive, right? Because there's so much psychology. There's so much psychology now that we're unpacking the human mind and we're understanding the human mind and we're understanding the upbringing. And yet there's all these inspirational stories of people who do great things.
Yeah.
What,
Shane, I'm going to start to wrap this up a little bit, but I want to ask you if there's one thing that you could share like with the world that you think could really, like one person could take and say, this could change my life. Is there anything that comes to mind that you would want to share with everybody?
Yeah, lean in, and when it's uncomfortable, lean even further. Fall forward. Just go forward, and just when you feel the anxiety and the uncomfort of feeling dumb, you might be on the right path, because that uncomfortable feeling and anxiety and stress aren't always bad, right? If you're feeling anxiety and stress, it might be a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like people go and work out at the gym. If you walk out of the gym and you're not sweating and your muscles aren't stressed, you probably didn't progress.
Right.
Right. And your human mind's the same way. And so when you seek stuff, seek uncomfort in the right form.
Yeah.
Right. I hire guys that come out and they sell smart home and solar. And my best guys are the ones that sometimes suck at first and they struggle at first. Right. But when they lean into that uncomfort and they have that success, then starts a whole nother anxiety and stress. Well, how do you invest your money? Right?
Yeah.
That's stressful. If you grew up poor like you and I, dude, I was so scared. I didn't know what to do.
Right.
I didn't know what to do. Well, that's a little bit of anxiety and stress. And it's not bad anxiety and stress. You need to lean into it. You got to invest. You have to learn. So I would say lean in. Like lean in when it's uncomfort. Seek uncomfort, especially in your younger, any years. Seek uncomfort that can potentially change your life.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples of people that have, done huge businesses. You got Fortune with their 30 under 30 list, but then you also have like the Colonel Sanders of the world that didn't start his business until he was like 70 years old or some shit. Whatever.
Colonel Sanders failed at, I actually remember reading his whole story, and I think he finally, it was like 55 or 56, he finally scored a deal with building his KFC recipe. In fact, he had it around World War I, but it got shut down because of World War I rubber shortage.
Right.
And he actually had a steamboat business, and that sunk. He actually was, I believe, a lawyer and got banned for fighting in the court.
Okay.
Oh, dude, he and then all of a sudden it just clicked.
Guy was off the hook.
And now he's Colonel Sanders. Yeah.
Swinging that cane around, bashing people upside the head.
Yeah.
But I think that's great what you said, if you can shift uncomfort into more of like a space of curiosity in your brain, where it's like, okay, I don't understand that, and then seek out that curiosity to explore something. I think that's one of the keys for me is just like being curious and wanting to understand, because if you want to understand and you continue to like look at life in that way, like new technologies, new spaces, things that are disruptive, things that make you uncomfortable. Why do they make you uncomfortable? Be curious all the time. And if you can do that and put that together with like leaning in, it's kind of the same thing in a lot of ways. But be intentional with your curiosity, lean into it, and pretty soon you find out that you're learning things that other people aren't putting together, and you can change your life.
Yeah, and I would phrase that with, I like to call it changing the question mark. So you're saying basically go, well, what if? Because there's two ways to say that. You go,
right.
Well, what if?
Right.
No, well, what if things go bad? What if things go left? What if things go right? And okay, cool. So where are you at if that happens? But you're basically doing that curiosity, saying, well, what if? What if it works?
Yeah.
What if you make a little bit of money? What if you invest it?
Yeah.
I mean, the lives you and I are living right now, we could probably not have described ever when we're out there digging ditches out in Nampa Caldwell, right?
Yeah.
No
would have
way.
been mind blowing.
I can't even the individuals I'm around, the things I've seen, the world travel. I could never describe it, but that curiosity is, well, what if? And so I'd put out there with everybody like, well, what if? What if it does work out? What if all these people are wrong? What if you're right? What if you just worked and got it done? Like, what if?
Right.
You could have control of your life and you could impact a lot of people greatly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that what if is extremely important because it's a whole shift of how that question comes across.
Especially with the fact that anxiety and depression are all-time high. I just did that nonprofit event, and I mean, suicide's oh my gosh, for teen suicide in Idaho, we're top 10 year after year. And so a lot of the what ifs, it's sad to say, a lot of the what ifs are going the other direction. Well, what if? And people are sad and anxiety. So I really hope people lean in that positively, and maybe the positive vibes can be spread to a lot of people, and we can get back on track on turning back the knob a little bit, and let's get anxiety and depression down lower. Let's get people believing. Let's get the Mario Thomases telling people they're going to be successful.
Right.
These people leaning in, and the positive what if, like you said, the curiosity in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah, change your life, just be intentional about it. Like shut off the negative inputs and start asking questions and learning and leaning into the things you don't understand, because if you're not happy with where your life is at now, that's necessary for you to lean into things you don't understand, because otherwise you're going to stay in the same rut that you're in.
Yeah.
So, all right, Monsters, thanks for joining us. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. And thanks again, Shane. Appreciate your time here and contributing to it. So cheers.
Great time.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss out on becoming a monster.